Welcome here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora for an all-new Dolphin Dive exclusive to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora in our multimedia marketing partnership with LeMoyne College as we get set to go into year 3. Interesting for me to be the exclusive multimedia marketing partner, not of LeMoyne College Division 2, but LeMoyne College Division 1. So this past year, the better part of this year, that's been a conversation on AD and DT, and I've sat down with Dr. Linda Lemura, the president of LeMoyne College, about this. And now we know that it's official as of July 1st, 2023. I'm here picture in picture with the LeMoyne College Dolphins softball head coach, Tracey Roman. Always appreciate having Tracey on the show. And what I love about this is when Tracey and I first started to talk, she said, any coverage of softball would be great. We would love to have that. And it's not something that they typically had. And I stood in that office that she's in right now. And I said, Tracey, you'll get to know me, but I'm going to cover your team because I want to, because softball deserves it. And I've been doing that in our community. I've been covering softball for a while. I got a passion for it. And when I took my coaching class and when I was at Marywood University, we had to coach through 2 sports that they chose. And our teacher chose softball and basketball. Played basketball my whole life. Softball, I got to learn. Not as easy as it looks to some people. And the pitching is a pain in the what. I'm happy that the pitcher that pitched to us, because we were all students in the class, that it was a student and not somebody who had played the game for many years, because I would have horrendously struck out, I'm sure. But I was able to get a hit or two while we were playing the game and learning the game. So with that intro, Tracey has been very passionate about the sport of softball. And yeah, Trace, I know that, like you said, you wanted to get some coverage of it, but to me, it's an honor and a privilege to cover your team. And there's been some really awesome moments this year. So welcome back to the show, but you've made it fun for me. So thank you for that.
Well, thanks, Dan, for having me back. And, we appreciate the coverage. I know the team really appreciates it, and so do I. So thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun. The sport's a beautiful sport. And I kind of want to start there. We've talked about it a bit before, but what keeps you coming back to softball? Why is it so fun for you to coach it and see the development of your student athletes?
I wish I had an answer for that, because I have spent a good chunk of my life trying to get away from the game, but I always come back to it. These opportunities just keep popping up for me. So I just think it's something I'm meant to be a part of. I really enjoy the process of watching student athletes grow from their freshman year through their senior year, and in some cases their 5th year. We have CJ Barrett graduating tonight. She was a 5th year for us this year. And it's just awesome to see the growth process. And not even from a softball standpoint, that's cool as well. But just as a human being, watching them grow and evolve is the people they're becoming to go out into the real world. So, I love it. This is the best time of the year for softball. The visibility we have on TV is awesome. You can turn on 4 or 5 different channels and see college softball games this time of year, which is, it's on the move and growing, which is what we want to see.
And it seems like when we look at, softball, like you said, at this time of year, when we see the Women's College World Series, to some people in conversations over the years, it's one of their most fun sports events to watch. They said they really just kind of jump right into the college world, the Women's College World Series. And I've spoken with, fellow broadcasters and people that have watched sports forever, and they'll tell me like they're in it. They are they're excited to watch it, and it's something that they look forward to. So hearing that the last couple of years has meant a lot to me. And you and I have spoken about the growth of it. So I'm sure for you as a coach, it's nice to see it on so many different channels, and to hear people say, because normally you hear the Super Bowl, you'll hear, the NCAA tournament. But when you hear, no, like we get really into softball because it's some really good, sports and student athletes playing. That's got to be something that's music to your ears.
It's just really cool to see how it's evolved over 20 plus years. I played in the College World Series in 97 and 98. And again, back then they covered the championship game only. And now to see, tournaments being covered, conference play throughout the year, and then obviously the World Series, it's pretty cool. But like you said, and to your point, we're attracting people that have no affiliation to softball, that really maybe flipped it on one day, or maybe their niece plays or something, and they check it out and they become addicted to it. And I think we do draw a lot of baseball fans. The game tends to go quicker. It's a faster paced game for sure. I think some people appreciate that, but it's exciting with the base running and both the long ball and the short ball. And of course the pitching, which can be very dominant at certain levels.
Yeah, it's so much fun. And to look at your season, I mean, you wrap things up at 23-23. You had moments where the team was, just hitting that ball like crazy. We know what LB, Laura Bennett, we know what she's been, pitching wise, to really lead that bullpen for you this season as well. And, see some of your other, pitchers kind of work through here and find some positives. This team has grown. I feel like the record doesn't adequately show the moments that you had that made this season so exciting. Would that be fair to say?
It's definitely fair to say. I have a lot of people that they'll come and congratulate you on a season and ask me how I feel about it. And I think any coach, no matter how you do, you always feel like you wanted more out of it. So it is really important as a coach to sort of reflect and look at what was good, what was not so good, what really needs improving. And, I was just looking at some of the numbers in 2022, we hit 262 as a team. And this year, I think, we were up to 305, led the conference offensively right up there until the end. And I still think we finished top 3. So that was just that improvement alone was pretty impactful. We struggled in the circle this year. I think that was clearly where we had some issues. But, we do have kids that were younger pitching out there too. So you are going to take your lumps. Laura's pretty solid, even on days where she doesn't have her best stuff. She knows how to win with what she has for that day. So that was great. We saw some defensive improvements on the field as well. But, so looking back, it's tough because, like I said, you always want more. But considering we had a pitcher leave at the beginning of the year, that hurt our staff clearly. And then Brooke Nicholas, we lost her. She ended up having a red shirt this year due to surgery. And then Mackenzie Koenig, of course, tore her labrum and tried like heck to push through that, but she did have some issues just sprinting and going laterally. So we couldn't use her defensively as much, which was tough. But so all things considered, and the youth we had on the field, particularly in the infield, I'm pretty pleased with our progress.
And like you said, in the circle, looking to get better. You have more time with Laura Bennett to come back here. And I know recruiting wise, you're bringing in a couple pitchers. What can you say about how you feel? And obviously they have to come in and they have to grow and learn and go through practice, and you have to see that evolution. But from what you've seen on film and what you've seen in person, what does the bullpen look like in the future?
I have a student athlete coming in by the name of Ariana Exarchikis, and Ari's, she's a force to be reckoned with, both offensively and defensively in the circle. She was throwing low 60s 3 years ago, so she's definitely going to bring some pizzazz to the circle. She's also played a national schedule at the travel ball level, so she's used to seeing high level competition. This is a kid that clearly, I always say I recruit Division I players who chose to play Division II. So I really feel like the kids we have coming in are prepared to compete at the Division I level as we transition. But no, I think that's going to be a big help for us in the circle. I think Julia is going to have a pretty solid work plan for the summer. I think one of the things that becomes difficult, and what some of these kids don't have to think about so much in high school, is you can be pretty dominant on a couple pitches. In conference play specifically, people know if you're a drop ball pitcher. They know if you're a rise ball pitcher. They know what to look for. So it's really important that you have other spin pitches to kind of work with, to kind of take away the strategy of the other team. And I think those are areas where Julia and Mick are going to be working over the summer, just to not be quite so predictable, which they're fully capable of doing. And then, we always have our eyes in the portal. You never know when you might find a gem there that's looking, for whether it be more playing time or just a better situation culture wise. So we always have an eye there. Nothing surfaced yet, but no, I feel good about what we have next year.
And, for you, Tracy, how much of it is portal and how much of it is wanting to take, someone from high school? How do you balance that out? Does it change every year? I mean, different coaches have different views of the portal. So how do you see it?
It's tough. I really am mixed. I don't love the portal. I certainly respect an athlete's opportunity to want to go and do something different. There are kids in there for very good reasons. There are kids in there because they're not getting what they want somewhere else,
Yeah.
or just want the opportunity to earn playing time somewhere else. So I think for me, where I stand currently, and I reserve the right to change this moving forward, but right now, it for me, it's more to suit a need year to year. I'm still, and I think softball's still in a position where you can look to recruit kids and have them grow for 4 years. It hasn't hit us like basketball or football, certainly. But yeah, if we have, if we want to fit a need and have a specific need year to year, and we find a kid that might be a good fit, we certainly won't shy away from looking there.
That coming here from Tracey Roman, the LeMoyne Dolphins softball head coach, in this special Dolphin Dive on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora exclusively. Tracy, you speak about this move to Division One with LeMoyne making the decision to do that, getting the invitation from the Northeast Conference, which I'm donning right now. And I was told by the commissioner, Noreen Morris, who I actually knew before I had made my partnership with LeMoyne. Noreen and I have known each other for a couple of years now because I do a thing called Commissioner Connection. And I speak with commissioners all over the country to get their thoughts and their visions on different things and NIL and the transfer portal and expansion and realignment and all of that. So Noreen and I have known each other for a while. She said to me, and I never have a reason to not believe her, she said, "This is the most comfortable sweatshirt." I'm going to tell you right now, it feels like I'm wearing a little blanket. So, I mean, she hasn't been wrong about it. But, the NEC is a real thing. LeMoyne made the decision through the ad hoc committee that went to then the president, Dr. Linda Lemura, that went to the board of trustees who voted together to bring this forward. And I've spoken with the chair of the board, Pete Delora, and obviously Dr. Linda Lemura, athletics director Bob Beretta, about this move July 1st, 2023. It's official. Bring me through the last year for you, knowing that this was a conversation. There was a bunch of public forums. There was discussion with coaches, with student athletes, with former student athletes, with families. What has it been like for you to be coaching with all of this happening in the background?
For me, it has been a non-issue. I have to be honest with you. I think I've just always approached it from the perspective that, LeMoyne College is my employer. Decisions sometimes need to be made for the long-term financial health of an institution or a corporation, whatever you want to look at it. So I just, we talked about it a little bit with the team. The team was certainly aware that this is something that could happen. We definitely talked about it in the recruiting process, making sure that student athletes coming in potentially knew what this could mean as far as competing for championship play, that kind of thing. But no, I mean, we just kept our nose to the grindstone and kept doing the day in and day out. I don't think, and I really don't believe our day-to-day process is going to change a whole lot. I just think right now, as coaches, you can't get too caught up in how this is going to affect us today, tomorrow, next month. We really have to have sort of long-term vision on what this is going to do for the college.
What are the positives of going D1 in your opinion?
Well, in my opinion, it exposes, it gives kids opportunities to go compete against teams that maybe they never thought they'd have an opportunity to compete against. That in itself, playing here at LeMoyne is different than playing out at Oklahoma, right? So some of these stadiums and some of these opportunities just wouldn't have been afforded to them. And many kids dream of competing at the Division I level. It's not necessarily about championships all the time, but just going out and competing and seeing how you match up. Any competitor usually likes to do that. I think it will give the college more visibility nationally, just to be Division I. Some people just like the ring of that Division I. We'll get athletes here that wouldn't have looked at us before simply because we're Division I. Doesn't matter if we're in the basement or at the top. So that's just the way sports works. I think obviously there's a long-term financial advantage for the college as it pertains to profit sharing, whatnot down the road. But no, just getting established first, though, there's going to be some growing pains. And I think we need people here that are creative and have long-term vision and really embrace the college in their quest to try and do something just a little bit better for the school as a whole.
For you, you become a Division I head coach overnight. Did you envision that ever being on your resume?
I never really thought about it, to be honest. So, I've assisted at the Division I level early in my career at the University of Massachusetts and then at Iowa State University. So I certainly am, a little more schooled than maybe some are on the rules. I think that's the biggest growing pain, I think, for coaches in our department, those specifically that have only coached Division II. There are differences in recruiting rules, and there's less leniencies, and you just got to make sure you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's. So there are going to be some growing pains there. But no, I mean, I didn't think I would just get a Division I head coaching job unsolicited, so it
Yeah.
is a strange and a unique position to be in. But like I said, I don't really think it's going to change our day to day and what we do and what our student athletes are used to right now. Moving down the line 5 years, yeah, it might be a little bit different.
How did your student athletes respond to finding out that they're now Division I student athletes?
They've been quiet about it, honestly. And I've tried to take some inventory, just on an individual by individual basis. And, I think some are excited about the opportunity. I think some are a little bummed, especially those that are going to be juniors and seniors, about the lack of, I don't think NCAA tournament so much, but just conference play.
Yeah.
Um, but, I just said it's still an opportunity to measure ourselves against some of the better teams in the country and just see a side of softball that maybe you haven't seen yet before. So I think as a coach, it really depends how you spin it to your kids too. Any athlete's going to go out there and compete if they're truly a competitor, regardless of the circumstances. So so I've seen mixed messages. I don't really feel like we're in danger, specifically our program and a bunch of kids jumping in the portal over this. But I mean, definitely mixed emotions. But when it comes down to playing the game, they're going to play the game like they always have.
Yeah, and you said you try to recruit Division I talent that just so happens to play in Division II. So you said, some things don't change for you. Did anything adjust for you in recruiting? I mean, if that's been your mentality the whole time, I can't imagine that much has changed, but did anything change? Has anything changed in how you're attacking recruiting at this point?
No, not really. I mean, really, I'll look for kids that maybe have a little more size to them. That definitely helps. You have to get kids, instead of maybe bringing in someone that you see as a really talented athlete that you're going to develop over a couple of years, maybe look for kids that are ready to get out there from the get-go. So yeah, it might change a little bit, but not significantly, not really significantly in what we're doing.
How do you when you look at this, I mean, you and I have talked about it here on the Dolphin Dive before, that the way that you schedule games, you want to challenge your team and you challenge your team right out of the gate. I mean, you played a bunch of top 25 ranked programs this year and you went on neutral field and put yourself out there and you got some victories, you got some games that were really close where you could take a lot of positives from it. So you've already put that challenge out. As you build your non-conference schedule going into Division I, what are you looking at now? I mean, what tournaments are available to you? What opportunities? Do you have kind of a vision of who you'd like to play or what conferences you'd like to play?
Yeah, we've reached out certainly to some of our local Division I friends. We have St. Peter's committed to coming here next year to play us. And, we've been in contact with Niagara and St. Bonaventure, staying on the Jesuit theme here, right? But I think I got to be a lot more careful about our scheduling. I don't want to completely go out and demoralize our squad. I do want them to see some of those good teams, but I don't think it'll be what I would say the bulk of our schedule, because there are differences. And, and I think we'll see that pretty quickly. I know, and I'm confident that we'll compete fairly well at the mid-major level. But when you start talking about the Power Five conferences, they just have resources and things available to them, where, in my opinion, they should be where they are, because it is a little bit easier. But no, I think scheduling, we just have to be strategic about it. And we certainly want to challenge the kids, but we don't want to demoralize them either initially.
Yeah, and you said you have St. Peter's coming in. I mean, that's great in the conversation with Niagara and St. Bonaventure. I mean, for you to be able to make those connections and to have those games, just how important that is to, like you said, connect with other Jesuit institutions and connect with institutions inside of New York State. Is that kind of the model for you as a coach at LeMoyne to say, hey, let's reach out to these Jesuit schools that are D1, but then let's also make sure that we're reaching out to New York schools and helping us in recruiting to kind of be seen all over, because within the Conference of the Northeast, you have Wagner, you have LIU, so you're going to get those games. But for you, is there going to be an emphasis on New York schools, non-conference wise?
Yes and no. It's tough. If we had the weather we have outside right now all year round, I would say yes. But we're always going to have that non-conference portion of the schedule. We're allowed to start playing the weekend of February 10th. That's not going to happen anywhere in New York State. So we're always going to have to go south and find other areas to play the first half of our schedule. Now, where being local to New York helps a little bit more is with our non-conference schedule as it pertains to when the season starts. At the Division II level, we're just not close to anybody. So trying to get Division IIs to come here and us going there, it's further than a day trip, which is, budgetarily pretty tough. And now what this does is it does open up the opportunity to go somewhere, shoot down the road to Buffalo and play a Niagara or Olean in a day with St. Bonnie's. So we didn't have those opportunities. Of course, we have Cornell, Binghamton, Syracuse right across the road, and Colgate. So there's just more opportunities for games close to home when the conference starts, which we haven't had since I've been here, just because of the logistics of D2.
Yeah, and I think a trip down to Florida. I mean, could you ever look at like maybe a North Florida or an FAU or an FIU or something like that? Put yourself in, different places in that sense, because we know some of those Florida schools. I mean, they're in the tournament this year, but there's schools like a North Florida, like I mentioned, or an FAU or something like that, where we're not seeing them in this year's tournament. But I mean, it puts you in the South, and I mean, you have to be strategic in what you do. But do you look at maybe some of those schools where it's like, okay, this isn't a tournament team this year, so it'll still put us in Florida, but not against maybe a ranked team, or again, because you said you don't want to demoralize, but you want to kind of see what you have. So do you look at something like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's tournaments all over the country. There's tournaments out in Hawaii. There's tournaments, Texas, California. There are more preseason tournaments, I would say, by and large, at the Division I level. And really, you can find and shop around and pretty much get whatever you want. If you want to, go compete at a mid-major type tournament, there's that. If you want to go compete somewhere where there's a mix of both, Florida State puts on tournaments every year, and it's not all top 25 teams that go, but you certainly can get a taste of what that upper echelon of competition looks like, which, it is an opportunity for the team, because sometimes they just aren't aware of what's really out there.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of opportunities. We're not going to be, struggling to find opportunities. If anything, it's going to open up our scheduling a little bit.
I'm already excited about St. Peter's. Like as soon as you said that, I'm already like, yes, and they're coming to LeMoyne. So when I was speaking with athletics director Bob Beretta, he's told me for many, many months now what his plans were, short term and long term. And in the short term, he said to me three things. He's consistently said three things. They had nothing to do with going Division I. He said, I'm going to do this no matter what. That was getting softball, a press box. That was doing some things to the baseball fields and whatnot, and baseball field. And then also putting a concession stand at Ted Grant Field. To know that of those three projects that Bob had circled here in his first few years of being the AD, that he said, I want to make sure softball has a press box. Like, we need to do something with the softball field. What does that mean to you that your athletics director had put you on a short list with or without the move to D1?
I think I'm lucky in the fact that I have an AD that, holds baseball and softball very close to his heart. But I also think he's been around the game long enough to know, especially with all his time and experience at West Point, that us not having a press box could potentially be a Title IX violation. And he tried to get out in front of that. Now, just because administrators are aware that it might be a violation doesn't mean they always push to get things done. So to Bob's credit, like he sees these things and he wants better for our student athletes. So I'm grateful for that. And the other thing I would say is it helps whenever there's improvements on campus, be it to athletic facilities or, this year they're renovating Riley Hall, it makes the school look better, because it's seen as a sign of growth. This is a school that's growing and is in a financial place to keep improving itself. So I think it speaks volumes, not only to the student athletes that are going to come here, but other students that are just checking out LeMoyne in general. So anytime we're building and doing anything and making improvements, I think it really helps the optics of the college as a whole.
For you, if you could see anything happen with softball at LeMoyne, what are your plans? Like what would be something that you would want to see or you would want to do if you could have anything? What do you think about?
I think about an indoor facility, a field house per se, which, is everybody's been talking about around here. It'd be nice to have a field house that includes an indoor track, because there are, some of our sports do have to go off site to practice at certain times of the year. And when you're sharing space with basketball in their season, it can be tough, more on the student athletes, because they're now having to come in at, 6 o'clock in the morning, opposed to maybe 9 o'clock practice time. So I think a field house would be on my wish list. It's not something that you're going to get overnight. There's a lot of money and there's a whole bunch of processes you got to go through to get something like that approved on a college campus. So, but I think it would be beneficial not only to us, but to many sports that compete here.
Yeah. No, and I, speaking with Robin Wheelis, the head coach of the men's and women's cross country and track and field, talking about that indoor track. I know that's something that is really important to, him as well. For you, Tracey, to see this move, and we talk about the leadership, like you said, Bob Beretta, the athletics director, I mean, he's coached softball. It is very close to his heart. So, when you have Bob and you have President Dr. Linda Lemura and you have the board of trustees led by Pete DeLaura and the whole board itself, what can you say about the leadership at LeMoyne as far as not just the move to Division One, but in general? How do you kind of take in the leadership? Because whoever's steering the ship, I mean, you got everybody on the boat and we can all have opinions, but it comes down to the people steering it. So how do you view the leadership and the decisions that they're making?
I think we have leadership that values the student athlete experience. And you don't always have that in fiscally difficult times. It's sometimes for colleges, the easiest thing for them to do is say, let's cut a program here, let's cut a program there. And if there's not value for athletics teams, sometimes those teams can be in jeopardy. Yeah. So I think it just speaks volumes of what they think and how they feel about the student athlete experience, what athletics can do to represent your front porch, to the college in many ways, but just increasing the visibility or whatnot. But yeah, if we didn't have the right leadership in place, I do not think a move like this would have happened or would be possible. And it has to be more than just an athletic director. An athletic director can have great vision for something, be a great visionary, but if you don't have the leadership up top that's on board with you, you're not going anywhere. So, I'm grateful, to President Lemura. I think she's a great leader in all capacities, but now I think it's great that we have people that really value the student athlete experience and what sports can do and how it can help, some of these young people later on in their lives.
Yeah, and coming into the NEC, the Northeast Conference, you have Merrimack and Stonehill. And I mean, they obviously are well known to LeMoyne. They competed in the NE10. And so to know that you're coming into a conference where Merrimack has been for 4 seasons and Stonehill has been for, a season of their sports, what does that mean to you to come into a new situation, yet you're going to have familiar faces and you've competed against them before?
For softball in our sport specifically, we're not as far away as what people think, so it shows you, and just to see how they've gone on and I know Stonehill had a rough year this year in their inaugural year, but she went out and competed and played some people, and it's going to take a while to get started. Merrimack is doing well as it pertains to softball. It's taken them a few years, which you would expect. But like I said, I think we've always in my experience here at LeMoyne, competing against some of the mid-majors in the fall, we compete very well with them. We're going to see faster pitching. Traditionally Division II is, anywhere between 57, 60 miles an hour. Now we're going to see low 60s to mid 60s, probably a little more consistently. So there are some adjustments that'll need to be made, but I just think it's encouraging that, you go play with those schools that have already made the jump and have proven that they can do that and compete at that level.
Here with Tracey Roman in this edition of the Dolphin Dive, exclusive to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora and our multimedia marketing partnership with LeMoyne College, speaking on softball and of course the move to Division I here with head softball coach Tracey Roman. Looking at the NEC, I mean, they truly are a Northeast conference. So you have St. Francis in Pennsylvania, you have FDU in New Jersey, you have Wagner and LIU in the New York City, Long Island area. You have Central Connecticut State and Sacred Hearts inside of Connecticut. You have Stonehill, and right there in Massachusetts with Merrimack as well, and LeMoyne, the only representative from upstate New York. So when you look at this map as a coach, do you get excited? Because it seemed like in the NE10, it was hard to sell, and it's no offense to the NE10, great competition across the board in numerous sports, but it seemed like it was hard to sell matchups, right? It was hard to sell Adelphi coming in. It was hard to sell SNU. It was hard to sell, playing these Vermont and New Hampshire teams. It just seemed like it was difficult to get people excited about it. Where now, I mean, yes, you have teams in the Northeast, but now you have some New York City teams, and so in New Jersey. I feel. Do you get a sense that maybe we can create some rivalries? We can create more of a fan base around it, because it just seemed like some of these games were difficult for fans to kind of see as a rivalry.
Yeah, I think for sure. I think having not specific to the NEC, but like just having so many teams available within New York State, your local base or your local community, you can go out there and you find people that went to Colgate or Binghamton or Albany, or, there's just, the list goes on and on. Logistically, the travel is going to be extensive still in the conference, but, something that's going to take the lift off a little bit is playing 3 conference games against one opponent on the weekend versus 4 against doubleheaders against 2 different opponents. So, there is that too, which gives a little more wiggle room for scheduling even more non-conference teams during that time period. So yeah, I think there's definitely the possibility that some rivalries can be created. We just have to establish those relationships with coaches, on a program by program basis. And I think you'll see a lot more enthusiasm just because of where we are in New York State and in all the available schools that we have near us now that we can potentially play.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to some coaches about it where they said, they might have said no to me in the past, and now how are you going to say no to me? If we're Division I now, so creating those, because they're not far away, like you had made mention of. I mean, there's so many schools in New York State, and that can automatically. So yeah, the move to the NEC, it opens that door that it's not even a conference game, that you can create these rivalries with. So there's excitement that can come from that. I mean, Division I wise, we know staffing that, there's only 2 teams that have a full-time assistant coach, that being men's and women's basketball. So for you as a head coach, what does that mean to you, that the move is going to potentially create more scholarship opportunity, and at the same time that each of these sports are going to have the opportunity to expand your staff, have a full-time assistant coach? What does that do for you in the training and development of your team?
If I think all of our programs need a full-time assistant, which, that's not news to Bob or anybody here on campus.
Yeah.
One of the immediate impacts we feel is a difference from Division II to Division I. Volunteer assistants and grad assistants can no longer recruit. So that immediately takes some of the people we've relied on in the past off the table right now. For softball, for example, we can have 3 people out there at once, but they have to be paid assistants that have passed all the tests and all this and that. So that's different. As far as impacting the student athletes, I know for softball specifically, we are so position specific with pitchers and hitters and defense and the like. And just to have someone that can maybe come in and focus on just the pitchers would be a huge luxury. Whenever the kids can get more skill specific attention, they're going to automatically improve at a greater rate, because they have more eyes on them consistently, that's helping them with their craft. So, and it just takes the lift off of what a head coach is doing. A lot of times our days are filled with travel planning and things that have nothing to do with coaching, and a full-time assistant takes some of that lift away from the head coach so the head coach can better prepare the team for competition.
What's the adversity of going Division One? What do you think is a challenge?
Just like anywhere in the world, the rich get richer sometimes and the poor stay poor, so you're going into a world where I think there was more parity financially. There were certainly discrepancies at the Division II level, but the differences now in some of the programs you're competing against is just absolutely significant. I know Oklahoma's operating budget is around $4 million. And I think that's half of what our athletic department spent last year on all of our sports. So there's significant differences with some of the schools you're competing against as far as what they have access to. There's people on their staff that are dealing specifically with mental health. They have academic services, maybe perhaps people that travel with kids when they have tests and things they need to do on the road. There's just a level of service provided, which is afforded through, greater financial resource at some of these schools than what we'll have initially. I know LeMoyne has a phased approach and things don't just happen overnight. So we have to be patient and understand that, there's going to be some growing pains. And for a while we may have some disadvantages, but it's how you frame it to your student athletes. And at the end of the day, it's still a great opportunity that they didn't have before.
And in closing here, before I let you go, Tracey, we know that in the background, as of July 1st, 2023, you're an NEC school and you're going to compete against NEC teams and you're considered part of the conference, and softball will jump right into that. Postseason wise, you can't play in the NEC postseason for 2 years and you can't advance to the NCAAs for 4 years. Now, the NCAA, Noreen Morris was on a committee, the commissioner of the NEC. She was on a committee nationally that was looking at taking that 4 years and knocking it down a little bit for the NCAA. But with everything the NCAA has been focusing on, they kind of push it to the side. So she's hoping they'll get back to it. Bob Beretta has asked the NEC to do away completely with the 2-year hiatus. So how do you handle it? How do you tackle it if it stays 2 years and 4 years? What do you do to make these seasons advantageous? Because if you're recruiting somebody right now as a freshman, their entire time at LeMoyne, they can't go to the NCAAs, and half of their time they can't go to the NEC postseason. So how do you battle that in recruiting and find a positive in adversity?
Well, again, I think it's how you frame it as a coach. I think you have to be realistic and you have to explain the numbers realistically to your teams.
Yeah.
I know in the conference we're in, we would have to win our conference outright to get a berth to the NCAA tournament. There is no selection show as far as, typically 4 or 5 teams from the NE10 gets into the national tournament. That is not the case anymore, especially with the conference we're in. It would be you win or you'd have no shot at going, period. Yeah. That's just how it works. So explaining to the team, with 300 plus Division I teams across the board that play softball, there are schools and programs that never make it to an NCAA tournament. They played year after year after year and have had programs in existence for 60 years and have never gotten there. So it's not easy to get there to begin with.
Yeah.
The conference stuff, I think you can work to a point where you're going to compete for championships, but I don't think it's going to be instantaneous. So I think you got to be realistic. Yes, I think the rules are archaic. I know there's a movement across the country to try and get some of those rules, looked at and say, okay, what was the purpose of even putting these together in the beginning? That's not something we have control of at this point. But I think just being realistic with the kids that you're recruiting and what you're doing, it's like, listen, you still have the opportunity to measure yourself against some of the best talent that plays the game currently, which is an opportunity afforded to few, really. So, and it's also an opportunity to be a part of something that's building for the future and setting a foundation for the future. And I have no doubt that our team will be able to compete, and we have athletes coming in that are going to help build that foundation. And just getting them to understand they're part of something that's a little bit bigger than themselves individually. We're building something for the future, something great for our programs, but also something great for the college.
And do you kind of have that short and long-term goal for you? I mean, you came in such a unique way during COVID times. Now you're in another unique experience of being a Division II coach that's now going into Division I. So you've had nothing but unique challenges, Tracey, at LeMoyne. So do you build and have you built a short and long-term plan of what your vision is for this team going into the NEC? Then once you can compete in the NEC tournament, to once you can go to the NCAAs, I mean, have you started to put a strategic plan together, or is there a strategic plan that you already kind of have?
There's definitely a strategic plan that I already have. I think, yeah, to your point, there's been one thing after the next since I've been at LeMoyne, but my coach used to always say great players or good players make adjustments and great players make adjustments faster, right? So,
Yeah.
and I think part of being an athlete is learning how to compartmentalize and stay focused on the things that you can control. You can't control winning. You can't control winning a title. You have to stay really in those process goals that are going to lead to the outcomes that you want. And right now, I don't think it's wise to really think too far down the road. Right now, we have to stay in and just maximize the potential of every kid that's coming in. And I think in doing so, some of those results will start to take care of themselves over time. But when you start getting too far ahead of yourself, you're almost setting yourself up for defeat, so just learning to stay in the moment and working on and staying focused on the things that we can control is what we need to do right now.
Your first impression of the NEC, Noreen Morris, the commissioner, came on to campus. I mean, what has been your first impression of the conference?
They were great. They were in, I think they're embracing us with arms open, and, they were very ready and prepared for the questions that we had and anything that they couldn't answer for us. They've been true to their word as far as getting back to us as soon as they get the answers. But they understand it's a transition, and it's not going to be without some growing pains, and they're very down to earth and realistic about what's going on. But, I felt nothing but excitement and enthusiasm for the future of the NEC from them and where we're going. So it was an overall good feeling.
I come from Tracey Roman, LeMoyne College Dolphins head softball coaches. The team moves to Division I. The school moves to Division I inside of the NEC as of July 1st, 2023. In this edition of Dolphin Dive, exclusive to Wake Up Call, Tracey, as always, thank you for the hard work that you've had of this past season. Thank you for your hard work on the recruiting trail. And thank you for being so candid and open about this process of moving to Division I.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Dan. Thanks for having me back.